Imagine you were cursed to live your life in a shell of mental illness. Somewhere deep inside your psyche is the core you, the essential self, but the rest is warped with trauma, psychosis, delusions of grandeur, hallucinations, hearing voices, a sense of immortality despite all the evidence to the contrary. Imagine your life was spent talking to yourself in public until you're shamed, and adapt and just do so in private. Or worse yet, not just talking to yourself, but to invisible apparitions or figments of your imagination that aren't accessible to anyone except inside your own degraded mind. Imagine you plead and beg this mystical, invisible force of the universe will sway the flow of positivity your way. That energy comes to you before anybody else, convinced that every bad thing that happens to you is the direct result of something you said or did, a punishment of sorts. Living in a perpetual prison of preposterous self-persecution. Imagine being in such an eroded state of intellectual decay that you eat and drink some drab, bland, and simple substance, but fantasize in your mind that it's magical and supernatural and it will grant you special access to the spirit realm. Imagine dancing around and singing strange songs as loudly as you can, dedicated to all of the imaginary friends living inside your deluded head. Just imagine thinking that you somehow are more special than all the others, that you have a destiny and a calling so much more significant than someone else. Could you imagine living a life like that? That's organized religion. I could be more specific, but I think I just hit for the cycle in that one. Let's quit on the punchline, am I right? In Divine Redefined, I'm deconstructing all the major religions to find out how we're all similar. And I've got a new list of universally agreed upon tenets, not commandments. We can all, we can and should strive to live by. And welcome to the podcast. Words matter. They convince others of what we're communicating. But moreover, our words slowly convince us of what we're selling. Say it enough and it becomes true, right? I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and gosh darn it, people still hate me. Are you blessed or are you lucky? Blessed or fortunate? Blessed or privileged? We use the word blessed so freely, loosely. It means nothing anymore. It actually means something, according to the old dictionary. The proper use of the adjective means made holy, consecrated. Made holy. You know, I'm a stickler for definitions because words have meaning. Consecrated means to declare something sacred. Sacred and holy, synonyms. But they both pretty much mean the same thing. They mean godly or connected to God in a way that is sacrosanct, the most precious, respected, revered, regarded. Blessed, we've allowed this word to be used as profane slang. This blessed thing. I mean, it isn't the F word, but when said in that context, it certainly loses its godly luster, doesn't it? God bless you. When sneezing, it's long been customary to bless the sneezer, as in a godly blessing of good health. Like, hope it's just the fact that you live with 6 cats you're allergic to, Josh, and not a deadly pandemic disease that will take your life on a ventilator away from your family and loved ones. May God bless you and your sneezy sneeze that it's just that. A sneeze. Makes sense. I'll allow it. A little cliche for before 2020, but hey, since then, a new normal, am I right? Aw, bless their hearts. Bless it. Now, this one's a little snarky and sarcastic. We say this when we either mean it the wrong way or don't really mean it at all. Like my idiot cousin who's a racist and an un-American traitor who snuggles his My Pillow a little too tightly. Rather than having to have the same conversation with that intellectual amoeba, we dismiss and say, bless their hearts. Now, we certainly don't mean that, unless bless means stop. But that wouldn't be God blessing him, that'd be God blessing society. And see how that gets morally hinky when we bastardize our faith? Because our cousin's a racist and we realize he's abusing his children with that indoctrination so that if his heart stopped, maybe those kids might have a chance. See, that's soul-sellingly self-serving and sort of saps our salvation, wouldn't you say? Blessed. Blessed be the name. Blessed be the fruit. Shit. Well, you see what I mean. Handmaids and their tales aside. Blessed. Am I blessed? Am I? Absolutely, I'm blessed with talent. Talent I didn't have to learn all that much. A natural talent, which when sharpened and honed is quite effective. I've worked my entire life on this talent. I've studied, I've read, and practiced over and over and over. But I've been blessed with a few gifts that are natural or supernatural in nature. I also have skills and talents which I don't believe are God-given or biologically explainable. Cooking, for example. I'm a gifted cook, a rather talented and skilled home cook. As in, if you want me to cook you a meal, there's about an 80 to 90% chance I'll nail it. 95 to 99% chance it's edible. I'm not Gordon Ramsay or Tyler Florence. I'm nowhere near Iron Chef material. First off, I wasn't born with that gift. And second, I haven't trained my whole life for that. And to be at that level, I believe both things must be true. Now, what did I just say about my own mediocrity? That I've been blessed with incredible talent, but really shitty decision-making. I'm not the most talented in my field, but it is inarguable that as a voice actor, biologically with my voice, the range and dynamics of it, I'm talented. Gifted, if you will. And biologically, as I was created, one might argue that to be a God-imbued talent. For that, I would certainly be blessed. But cooking is different. For me, I watch TV. I think, ooh, that looks fun and tasty. I'll try it. A few times. For others, they see and taste and smell flavors and ingredients and can, in their minds, sense all of that together and plate it aesthetically somehow. They have a natural knife proficiency. They have a speed, a focus, and a mindset that allows them to not only create, but manage under high stress as well. These gifts can be tied biologically to hand-eye coordination, predispositions, and heightened senses of taste and smell, brain mechanics. Not always, but for the greats in their fields, my point is there's something supernatural or biological about their gifts. There's also the human factor of hard work. So are you blessed, or is it an opportunity? Am I blessed because the casting director decided that I looked like the guy she had pictured for the role? I'm sure we could argue that into the ground, but we need to be wary of our words. Blessed. Say the blessing. It seems, at least in toxic white Southern culture, this becomes cliche. Who gets to say the blessing? Am I going to show up and be asked to? Ugh. Then I have to make a thing and say, no, thank you. Public prayer goes against my spirituality. Well, thanks for fucking up Thanksgiving again, Josh. See, when you're in the minority, you're the one fucking everything up for everyone else. In my culture, everyone in the room wants to do the bow your heads while we all just pretend we're not thinking about deviled eggs and smelling the sage in the dressing or stuffing if you're into eating things out of a bird's ass that aren't protected by a shell. Look, everybody's standing around waiting to see if this is going to be the one where, like at the Oscars, we honor those we lost this year and we have to deal with the highlight reel while our necks are killing us. Or how about the standard old, Lord, we ask that you bless this food to the nourishment of our bodies. In Jesus' name we pray, amen. Amen. Close your mouths. You look silly, all agape like that. I know it just hits some of you. We've heard the same words muttered and mumbled in multiple families through different regions. None of it means anything. It's just this cultism and indoctrination into that cultism at every Sunday dinner or holiday event. It's empty and really, at the core, performative and sacrilegious. But we all have allowed this kind of twisted, self-aggrandizing performance art to saturate and dilute our spirits. When you eat pizza all the time, pizza isn't so special, and eventually you get sick of pizza. Now, that's a bad example. Who could get sick of pizza? Again, I don't talk about my religion or faith much because I consider myself sort of a hypocritical religious extremist in some regards. As in, I take things a lot more seriously than other things and more seriously than other people do. For example, around Easter, at least for longer than you should have been able to, you could go to just about any candy aisle and find a solid milk chocolate symbol of our Savior's suffering. Yeah, they sold solid milk chocolate crosses. And maybe they still do. Haven't seen one in a while, but I kid you not. Now, that sort of disrespect in another culture hasn't historically ended well. And maybe that, in a small part, could be why some of our enemies hate our culture. Chocolate crosses, literally and figuratively. Now, I happen to believe that's blasphemy and in really poor taste. I also think it cheapens and lessens everything about something I hold pretty sacrosanct. I don't judge or fight about it. This is an internal thing. I'm not desecrating the memory of this holy figure and the way he was brutally murdered by casting it in cocoa and putting it in my kid's Easter basket. And I try to limit how much I judge others for not taking that as seriously because I also see that as a big chunk of my personal faith. Not being a dick about it. Still, it's through my study of other faiths that solidifies my resolve that some things are just untouchably sacrosanct, or should be. Some things are more important than to allow to be subjugated by man's panache for redefining words and ideas, turning holy to hyperbole. I'm gonna write that down for a future episode title. Holy to hyperbole. Like blessed, for example. Well, the whole Bible, really. These are thousands of year-old texts from scrolls, many of which were incomplete, as in go look at the pictures you can find. It isn't like the ink rubbed off. Entire sections missing, dry rotted. Now imagine walking into a basement and finding a box of books, and you open it, and the paper crumbles. Then you have to pick up those pieces and put it together like a puzzle, and let's hope you keep them all separated. From redefining words and just making stuff up to fill in the missing pieces, our religions, all of our religions, are built on ideas that wouldn't pass the most basic scrutiny if we allowed them to pass through that filter of logical fallacy. But putting all these religions and documents, relics, stories, all in a metaphorical lab to examine and study under current scrutiny, science, knowledge, and understanding, looking at how we're similar, can help us understand why we choose to be so different. First, when we look at religious rules, it's important to make a distinction between supernatural laws and spiritual laws. Those supernatural laws are the ones that have to do with the deity. The spiritual laws are the things that really should be universal. They deal with the individual spirit, your soul. If it's about a god or how to worship that god, it's a supernatural law. If it's stuff like thou shalt not steal, kiss, cuss, or kill, spiritual law. Examine the Big Ten and the Islamic Five. Removing the supernatural laws, here's what you're left with. Honor your parents. Don't kill. Don't commit adultery. Don't steal. Don't lie. Don't be jealous. Give to charity. That last one is Islam. Didn't know that one, did you? Now, I think we could break that down pretty easily, but why? Can't we all agree that these rules here, these are the big human do's and don'ts? Honoring of parents and adultery might seem very culturally subjective rather than a human core tenet, but they're understandable if we look at them through other spiritualities as well as within context of their own. What if your parent's a real turd? And what did adultery mean back then compared to how we interpret it now, and what did that have to do with anything? In a moment. So with killing, lying, and stealing, the most important of the Big Ten, the rest are covered under the 7 deadlies. Lust, envy, gluttony, pride, greed, wrath, sloth. Let's examine these as they relate to how they affect us and other people. Each of the non-supernatural 10 commandments have something in common. They're cancerous, as much to the offender as they are the victim. Killing someone certainly takes their life, but unless you're a psychopath, the cost for taking a human life should be great. Internally, psychologically, spiritually. So while human punishment is due, a deeper sense of guilt and self-loathing might be considered hell on earth. So is it sin if it's a victimless offense? Now, my argument here is that it's never victimless. We are the ultimate victims of our actions and behaviors. We are the ones who determine the fates of our souls. So, aren't we wagering like I discussed in the Selling Our Soul series? Aren't we at the track, tossing money at the bookie, shouting and screaming and cheering and praying that our horse noses past first, that we win, that we didn't lose it all betting on the wrong pony? For every winner, there is always a loser. Who blesses the loser? We are the ultimate victims of our sins, and humanity, with these basic core principles that I've only really barely laid out, is dependent on our development and understanding of those principles. And we barely get to understand that before we've been indoctrinated into a cult at a very early age, whichever cult that might be. That's uncomfortable. But we must understand that, just like I've discussed before, cults are dangerous. I was born into and raised in a cult. Now, I have to be careful with that because I know people who really have a true cult experience that transcends even what I'm talking about, which is basically just basic cult light. All religions are cults by definition. So if you grew up in a religion that wasn't your choice, you were born into a cult. Even if you still like that religion today, and it is your choice today, you were still born into, indoctrinated, and brainwashed into a cult, even if you still like it, unless you put a lot more thought into the bigger picture than maybe just your cult, you know? It's probably more Stockholm Syndrome than faith, psychologically speaking. No spoilers for the season finale, but this is a big part of the culture of cultism I'm deconstructing. So let's break down a basic set of human principles. Some we discussed before, and some we're going to turn to other spiritualities to reinforce. And then we'll apply those supernatural rules after we establish the basics. The 7 deadly sins, while literary and not doctrine, are essential to understanding the human condition. In that, things like envy and greed and gluttony are negative attributes. Sloth or laziness gets you nowhere. Think of this like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. Veruca was envy and greed. Violet was pride. Augustus gluttony. Mike TV, honor thy father and mother. What the non-supernatural laws teach us is that to thrive as individuals and as a society, we must not kill each other. Actually, it only says don't kill without specificity to exactly what we are not supposed to kill. It just says don't kill, so you're welcome, vegans. We must not steal other people's stuff or partners. We must not lie. So if I can walk around living my life knowing that my stuff is my stuff, my wife is my wife, what you're telling me is the truth, and that you're not going to kill me, then I can really focus on being the best me I can be, right? I've suddenly been provided a level of consistency and security that you and I have never known. Ever. Now imagine that. If as humans we all agreed to no killing, stealing, or lying. We tend to forget that those are commandments from God. If you've ever haggled with a salesperson, you know the free market is rife with stealing and lying. We just call it negotiating. And it happens on both sides. Two wings of the same bird, as they say. And so we have a basic set of principles. Who among us could argue that these aren't acceptable as our foundational morals? Add to that the 7 deadly sins. If we seek to avoid things like greed, excess, overindulgence, gluttony, having too much when others don't have it all, wrath, seeking revenge, sloth, complacency and laziness, pride, ego, not admitting when we were wrong, envy, jealousy, coveting, lust, while not all that sinister when directed appropriately, can be a slippery slope of dishonoring yourself and others around you. All of these can become our personalities and consume us. They often do. That's the sin. So if we seek to understand these negative principles and traits that are the ungodliest of all, among the most inhuman of all, well, we might seek to avoid them altogether, right? That's where we come into the only non-supernatural of the 5 rules in Islam. Give to charity. Doesn't that sort of nix most of the 7 deadlies right there? Greed, gluttony. If you're generously charitable, that's the exact opposite of greed. Sloth? How do you do charitable acts and be lazy, even if you're physically sedentary? Your heart is actively giving. Pride? I can think giving to a charity is a cure for pride. It's a humbling act. Envy, wrath, you get my point. So far, we know what not to do. And thanks to Islam, we have the one thing we are instructed to do: give. Christianity, for the record, is huge on charity. It just wasn't included in the top 10. 11, I'm sure. Or maybe they didn't want to appear as socialists. If we don't kill each other, don't lie to each other, don't steal from each other, and are generously charitable, how different do you think our society would look? If we sort of abolished the things that led us down the path of greed, gluttony, revenge, jealousy, pride, lust, and laziness, just think about how different things would look for society and you as individuals. Couldn't we agree that there is a higher standard in living this way? That these rules transcend whichever fairy tale they come from? Let's take a look at the supernatural laws or rules. These vary depending on the religion and who's watching us. Taoism or Taoism offers a set of principles that are natural and supernatural. Scientifically, this is the one that brought everything together for me. Things like meditation, observation, seeking a sort of unity, oneness with the universe, the world around us, everything. Taoism is complex, and there are many principles it teaches. I'm going to cover most of the relevant ones here. First, we're tasked as being in this realm with producing harmony. We are part of a bigger universe, but we, as individuals, seek to be one with it, to understand and appreciate, to bring about a balance. Similar to Wicca, which I'll discuss in a moment, there's the reverence of the natural world in Taoism, with an understanding and acceptance that we are all connected. We're all energy, so that's where you hear about the Qi and shows like The Last Airbender, where an appreciation and understanding of how water, wind, earth, and fire are all connected and dependent upon one another. Taoism seeks to observe these natural phenomena as a path of deeper understanding of the self and the world around us. Qi energy is the force that binds us and connects us. May the Qi be with you. From there, it's stuff like you hear Bruce Lee say, become water. Water, that same powerful force capable of cutting the Grand Canyon into the Earth's landscape, is also very passive. Things flow through water. You can stick your hand in that same flow that cuts through the earth, and it nourishes you. It can fill your stomach, hydrate your body. Or, with the mere lip of a small flap of flesh, fills your lungs, suffocating the life from you. Be powerful like water, but also let things flow through you. Don't resist the flow so much. Don't be so resistant. Go with the flow in life. Not politically or religiously, but the bigger picture. In life, go with the flow. The next principle is two opposites coming together to complete the other. That balance is the foundational principle of the universe. Harmony. Yin yang, black and white, dark and light, good and bad, Hall and Oates. One can't exist without the other. And when we find a harmonious balance with these energies, like yin and yang, female and male energies respectively, these come together to create that chi I mentioned before. Chi is perfectly balanced energy, a sort of spiritual homeostasis, if you will. How do we achieve this? This balance between our feminine and masculine energies. We must release our preconceived notions, ideas, indoctrinations, and prejudices. We must let go of assumption and those instinct first response thoughts and biases we all have. Moving past toxicity and seek the harmony and balance, the oneness with the universe. The other principles are those of observation, universal harmony, simplicity, patience, compassion, humility, release, personal balance in life, health, longevity, a respect for those who passed. Observing the weather, seasons, nature, people. Studying the cycles and rhythm of the world around us, seeking to understand it through the lens of how they're intertwined, helps us understand how we are all connected. The cycle of the moon affects our tides and sleep patterns. The cycle of the seasons affects our farming and moods and aspects of our lives as well. We are all connected. And that's really a focus of Taoism. In Taoism, respect for our ancestors and those who came before us. Honor thy father and mother. Parallels. But there are others: personal life balance, health and longevity. These are ways to honor your God, maker, and self. Thy body is a temple, right? So by living a life in balance, not working all the time, and living in good health, one would certainly think longevity would be in the cards. Imagine living by a religious doctrine where you could look at your boss and say, "It's against my religion to work 60 hours a week for you." Because it should be. Because the deadly sin of laziness, combined with the obligation to work hard and thrive within the God-given or biological gifts you've been granted, it's thrown out of balance by our for-profit, make-or-break capitalistic society. And it's brought into balance through Taoism's life balance principle. These different spiritualities can reaffirm one another, and they should. One might argue that skydiving might be sinful. It's recreational and high risk. So if you died doing that, you risked your longevity. You gambled with your temple and lost. Now, wouldn't that be the biggest sin? Carelessly and recklessly sacrificing the gift of life just for the fun and thrill of it? That's bigger than just one spirituality. For me, this is where the Christian idea of suicide as a sin comes into play. It always seemed inhumane that any higher power would create someone to suffer and then punish them for suffering and punish them more when they can't take the suffering. In 1999, my brother took his own life, and seeing some of the reactions of those around me, those who judged others as going to hell for taking their own lives, but when it affected them, it was different. It certainly put things into perspective. In a lot of ways I'll discuss more moving forward. Taking one's own life at the depths of depression is one thing. Risking one's life for a frivolous cause is another. As I said, we all make compromises. This is the human sin I've been talking about. Note, before my spinal cord injury, I loved skydiving. We know bacon is bad for us, mayonnaise, bread, but here we are piling on our BLT and downing the cholesterol pills every morning. Now, wouldn't that be a sin? It's a different kind of suicide. If you know you have health issues or that certain things you consume create health issues, then how is that any different than Cobaining yourself playing pogo with a boomstick? We don't want that accountability. We don't want that admission, that personal responsibility. Because that's when it hits us that we don't treat thy body as a temple, which again is covered in the most of the major mandates. We want to eat what we want, drink what we want, not exercise, and just be humans enjoying the human experience. Funny how we're hedonists at the buffet line, but prudes when it comes to the bedroom. Holy hyperbolic hypocrisy! As far as patience, humility, and compassion goes, we could all use more of that. But in Taoism, these principles are key to achieving that qi, that balance of life force. Finally, release. This is one of the core principles I've embraced far too late in life. Letting go. God grant me the serenity, blah, blah, etc., etc. Wrath, revenge, holding that grudge. The single greatest killer of relationships, resentment. The principle of release in Taoism applies to going with the flow, being like water. But I think it's bigger. I think it's turn the other cheek. It's do unto others. It's forgive and forget. It's love your enemy as your brother. Show grace. Parallels. These various religions and spiritualities are all very, very, very similar, but less a religion and more a philosophy, less an idy and more an ism, Stoicism is also helpful in this release principle. I joke that I identify as a Judeo-Christian, but that's just fun wordplay. Mine are far more Taoist ideals built on a foundation of the teachings of Jesus Christ, with hints of Buddhism, Judaism, Islam, Hinduism, Wicca, and so many others. You see, I was raised to cherry-pick what I wanted out of that book, so I cherry-picked what I wanted out of all of them. I mixed all of that together for a stew of Stoicism. Stoicism is an ancient Greek philosophy founded by a man named Zeno of Citium. This isn't a cult or religion, but a way of life. Seeing the world around you. It's a philosophy. One may practice Stoicism, but there isn't a church or rituals attached to it. It's more what we're talking about here. A stripped down version of rules to live by, just not as ghosty and sci-fi. Stoicism can be defined as showing no emotion, regardless of circumstance. Pleasure or pain. You're a Vulcan through and through. That's quite a logical captain. Those stoic presences have been the salvation for many heroes and many stories for many generations. The pragmatic sidekick that keeps the charismatic hero in check. It's funny that these characters tend to be sidekicks or number two behind the leader. Often their story arc involves them finding their humanity by the end. But what of those whose humanity is based in this stoic demeanor? What if Spock was the hero all along? What if it was that flat pragmatism that made him a hero? All the while, his passivity allows Kirk the glory and the grandstanding. Spock, the stoic, doesn't need that. He simply needs the mission to succeed. Stoicism isn't about rejecting emotion or not feeling it. It's about processing it, keeping it in check, and filtering that through the lens of perspective. Let's get past the flat, personality-less, statuesque stereotype for a moment, and let's look at the beliefs. Zeno of Citium thought that the highest and most revered virtue was that of knowledge, learning, and the pursuit of wisdom. This was the highest good you could do for yourself and the world around you. It's be like water, but as a commitment to a way of life. Flow in harmony with the universe and whatever it brings. Pleasure, pain, fortune, or something. Living in harmony, at peace with fate and providence, from wherever it may come. In Stoicism, the ideas of wealth and status, power, possession, these are neither good nor bad and bear no importance socially or otherwise to how we exist in this world with each other. In other words, no one is better than anyone else for what they do and don't possess and have. Everyone is equal. Even the ancient Greeks got what America can't seem to grasp all these millennia later. In previous episodes, I've discussed things like personal responsibility and accountability for your own traumas, resolved and unresolved. It's important that we own our place in this world and accept responsibility for our ripple effects. Stoicism's foundation isn't based on an all-powerful deity ready to spank us or leave coal in our stocking when we've been bad. Instead, it's standing up and accepting that while some things in your life happen to you and aren't your fault, many things in life are. And it's ultimately our responsibility for the way we act and react to these people or circumstances in our lives. We control our own destiny in that regard. Our lives, our moods, our mental health, and everything is ultimately up to us and how we respond to life. Now, how does this apply to our current social climate and culture of cultism? How many of us approach things pragmatically, removing ego and pride and emotion? How many of us observe this balance, this level of spiritual discipline in life? Note that in Taoism, no deity is mentioned. It's the universe, it's energy, and it's really centered around the self as it relates to the whole. As in, Taoism is a discipline one practices in order to bring about their own harmony and balance, and in doing so, bringing about a harmony and balance to the world around them. Because if I'm balanced, I'm doing my part. If I'm like water, the negativity will flow through me and out, and it doesn't cut into me like water through the American Southwest. It's just Zen, man. It's self-accountability. No God threatening you with burning in hell if you don't behave, just the hell you create and bring about for others. Karma in Hinduism and Buddhism, and a key principle in Wicca. What you put out, you will receive. Just like Taoism and Stoicism are very similar, Hinduism and Buddhism are similar geographically, in origin as well as in principle. And like Taoism and Stoicism, one of the core principles is harmony, at least religious harmony. Hinduism has 5 principles of Sanatana Dharma. These are their supernatural rules, which we'll talk more about when we're discussing the supernatural laws from Judeo-Christians and Muslims. In layman's terms, more simplified than it deserves, the 10 disciplines in Hindu are sort of their 10 commandments. There are the 5 yamas, the political, social, or universal goals. Then there are the 5 niyamas, or more personal goals. Note that I said goals, not commandments. Please heed the difference since words have meanings. The yamas, or great vows, are the big picture stuff. Truth, peace, celibacy, or purity of mind. Asteya, or the non-desire to steal, and the principle of minimalism or simplicity. Now, those sound pretty familiar, huh? Here, the Christian ideal of adultery isn't marital infidelity or even lust, but actual celibacy. See? And why? Because a preoccupation with pleasure like that can be a huge distraction, indulgence, and can corrupt the soul. It isn't Christian damnation or slut-shaming. It's a warning against excess and what these people thousands of years learned early on, all across the globe, in every major belief system. Not that you'll go blind from doing it too much, that abstaining from excess and desire is the only way to control that desire and achieve that oneness we seek. Discipline. Monks, priests, bad example. At least for the Southern Baptists are out there. Still, don't lie, don't steal, don't kill. Live simply so there's enough for everybody. Regulate your primal desires. The 5 niyamas are a path to spirituality through self-discipline, cleanliness of the mind and body, seeking to expel the negative ideas and thoughts, and to again treat the body as a temple, even up here. Seeking contentment through reducing the attachment for possessions, seeking what's truly going to bring you happiness. Reading and study of Scripture in a way that fosters an unbiased, neutral, and spiritually pure mind. Praying regularly. And the last one is complicated. It's basically living your life practicing asceticism, observing long periods of silence, celibacy, fasting, isolation, deep sleep deprivation, sleeping on the floor, standing for long periods of time, pushing and testing oneself for a deeper connection to the power of reality versus the force of spirituality. I'm probably not explaining that well, but again, here we are with the principle of purity, and you can see how this has been twisted into our purity culture. It's the idea that whatever spiritual magic that happens to you is happening to you because you're doing the things to bring about that magical feeling, respecting yourself, your thoughts, and the world around you. It isn't magic. It's just discipline. But since we're on the subject of that voodoo you do so well, Wicca. Now, when I say that, people assume magic and witchcraft, cauldrons and black cats. Now, that's ridiculous. Some are turned off by the paganism of it, but they couldn't define paganism. While taken to mean polytheism, which is just the belief in more than one god, it's also a word that's used to label unfamiliar religions or religions that don't adhere to the real gods, whatever those are. Now, I have a problem with this, as I have since about 4th or 5th grade, when I learned about Greece, Rome, Egypt, and mythology. I remember looking at my dad in church one day and saying, "Dad, if we worship the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, aren't we pagans?" He didn't like that, so I explained what polytheism was. Well, let's just say I could have farted in prayer and it had gone over better. How about Catholics? They worship Mary and how many saints? And Mormons? Joseph Smith. And we're all pagans. We all have more than one God. Wicca, while steeped in beliefs millennia old, is a relatively young movement, an organized religion, if you will. Still, the respect and reverence for the natural world and the many properties our realm embodies empowers my personal smorgasbord faith. You see, I don't need someone to believe any of what I believe in order for me to believe some of what they believe. We get so caught up trying to convince others of what we really don't even believe ourselves that I think we lose sight on the bigger picture. We should be listening more than we talk when discussing spirituality. As my daddy used to say, you got 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in proportion. Wicca doesn't really have a 10 Commandments so much as a guiding set of deeper morals and principles, similar to other religions. For Wicca, things like not judging other people for their lifestyles or spiritual paths, cause no harm to yourself, others, or the physical or spiritual realm, that karma-like belief, and ideals of protecting others and this natural world. It's a reverence to the earth and the natural world. This planet and solar system give us life, so that's sort of a perception of God, right? The thing about Wicca is they also have principles against using magic. Follow along, because I know that's a roadblock for a lot of folks. Still, even as Christians, people rely on magic all the time. They pray for it. They celebrate it as miraculous. In Wicca, using spells to manipulate or disrupt the balance and harmony of nature is, well, more or less a sin, for lack of a better word. You know, like chanting words to a higher power to manipulate events, thoughts and prayers. Using black magic, dark energy against somebody is a sin. Don't practice what you don't know. Even Dr. Strange had to have 2 hours of exposition learning this stuff before he could use it for the last 10 minutes. And strict warnings against misusing magic and the natural properties as a negative force. As a recovering Christian, I can see similarities in the sinfulness of using your faith as a weapon, like a club, a 700 club. In Buddhism, there isn't really a 10 Commandments. There are 3 basic principles, treasures they live by. There is Buddha, who is regarded as most holy. Then there's the Dharma, the teachings of Buddha. The final part is the monkhood, the daily discipline and devotion to upkeep of the temples, teachings, and traditions. That sounds pretty simple, right? Now, for Christians, we have Jesus Christ, the red words, and then the practice of being a Christian. We upkeep the temples and we adhere to the teachings and traditions. Or do we redefine those to suit our needs? In each of these spiritualities, even Christianity, there's an adherence to the importance of this natural realm we inhabit. Wards of Eden, as I've said before. There is a sense of seeking oneness with the universe, a constant journey of understanding. So in keeping with that journey, let's redefine our rules, our basic human principles we can all agree by which we can all agree to live. Don't kill. Allow the value of life to guide us. Don't lie. Truth is above all else. Our words have power, and we must be careful not to mislead, manipulate, or misinform anyone intentionally or otherwise. We must seek pragmatism and removal of ego from our perspective. Don't steal. There is no need when we have enough. Respect the earth and others. Observe and protect the natural world and those in it, and doing so in a way that honors those who came before and made our paths possible. Give to charity. Be generous with an open heart and mind, helping others. Seek a simple, humble, and focused existence, practicing self-discipline and regulating the many worldly temptations of excess and overindulgence. In everything we do, seek harmony and balance. Leave the world a better place than we found it. Avoid worldly temptations that lead down a path of self-destruction. Balance greed with contentment, gluttony with satisfaction, pride with humility, revenge with justice, separating jealousy from insecurity, lust from desire, and laziness from overworking oneself. How does that sound as far as a practical and universal rule book for humankind? Now, let's take a look at those supernatural laws. In the 5 pillars of Islam, along with charity, which we've discussed, there is praying 5 times a day, at least once in your life making the pilgrimage to Mecca, fasting annually during Ramadan, and declaring that there is only one true God named Allah, and that Muhammad is his messenger. In Hindu, the Sanatana Dharma states that God exists. The absolute Om is the divine Lord of all creation. It's a sound that resonates in every human. Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva are currently known divine manifestations of this Om. Morals and ethics are highly praised in Hindu culture because of the divinity of the human being. The individual's lifelong goal is to awaken their dormant soul for their true calling. Seeking a oneness with God, not so much with oneself. Religious, spiritual, and natural harmony. And knowledge of the 3 Gs. The sacred river Ganges in India, where sins are cleansed, the sacred script, the Gita, and the Gayatri, which is a sacred mantra or poem. Related to Christian terms, baptism, the Bible, and the Lord's Prayer. Or Pledge of Allegiance, depending on how proud a boy you are. In the Judeo-Christian 10 Commandments, there is only one God with no gods before him. Thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Remember to keep the Lord's day holy. Each religion's going to make the claim that their God is the only God. That's their business. It drives membership, keeps people paying their dues. Islam's primary rules are very specific instruction for their faith. Fast, go to Mecca, pray 5 times a day. These are all disciplinary tactics. And we can see some spiritual discipline aspects in Christianity as well. Keeping the Lord's day holy. The day the Lord rested after creating all of this. So we don't dishonor him by working on that day, not even for hate chicken. Don't take the Lord's name in vain has significant meaning for me. Not because saying God damn it is so bad. In fact, I'm just not sure it is. However, If I were to say, may God damn so-and-so, now that's a curse. In Christianity, Wicca, and every religion, whether they have a God or not, it's negative and it's wishing ill upon someone. That is a sin in every religion, and that's kind of our basic tenet of respect the world and people in it. Plus, the karma of asking any god to damn someone would be reckless to say the least. I look at the Lord's name in vain not as a curse so much as I do using the name of God to sell products, services, or ideas, exploiting God and believers for your own selfish means. That, to me, is the sin talked about in that commandment. It isn't just a church who can do this, misrepresent holy, sacred things to manipulate others. Businesses do it all the time, using the cross in their logo, using religious verbiage in their slogans and ad campaigns. It's disrespectful and shows how little they respect their deity. Going back to the controversial adultery idea, knowing what I know about human relationships, I'm just not sure I believe humans were meant to be sexually monogamous creatures. Now, it's clear we tend to pack up and mate for long periods, but the idea of a biblically dictated sense of sexual parameters to live by always seemed really creepy to me. Why would God make us with our own built-in pleasure toy and then tell us we'll go to hell if we play with it? We see that it isn't just one religion, though, that pushes celibacy, or at least a regulation of one's carnal pursuits. Why? Because of what I mentioned before. Now, Christianity doesn't address it in the Big Ten so much, but the notion of pure mind, heart, and spirit transcends a single religion. Jesus spoke of it, and in our modern Bible, it's unclear whether at 33 he had ever even been on a date. Now, I'm offering that adultery isn't what we think, and that commandment that we know and love is merely the same warning from every other major belief system against spending too much time in the shower. Now, I'm not advocating celibacy. I'm explaining why it's featured across the board. We get lost in specifics of our own thing. We forget to step back to think, I wonder why this is a thing here and there, and it's because sexual urges and desires can be one of the biggest things to derail us and distract us faster than anything else. Especially now when sexuality is in our faces every which way we turn. This is a daily struggle. Harmony and balance are universal ideals as well. Again, these are addressed specifically in other spiritualities all over the world throughout their sacred texts. I don't believe any one religion or spirituality has exclusivity on the answers or truth. If we knew for sure, it would be fact. Instead, we have faith. Too often, we mistakenly allow these two to blend and intersect. We must accept these two as being mutually exclusive. Faith, in and of itself, is not fact. Believing something to be true doesn't make it so. That discipline in your faith, combined with the deep study of it, coalesces into a chi, a balanced spiritual energy, a balanced self. And in our society today, we lack a lot of the discipline I laid out in this episode. We certainly don't study our faiths. Just like the Selling Our Souls series discussed, with these claims we make and opinions or ideas we won't budge from, we're risking gambling our very souls for something we don't even take seriously. If you don't even care enough about your own fairy tale to read your fairy tale and study your fairy tale, what makes you think anyone would listen to you? And when betting one's soul, I would think we would all want to be more learned on the subject than we are. More than even we would admit only to ourselves. I happen to believe there is a higher power guiding us. I also believe that higher power isn't so petty and narcissistic that it requires me to believe in it for it to exist, or that it would take harm against me for not bowing down to it, or not being capable in my feeble human mind to even comprehend it. I think my higher power would just be proud of me for even trying to be better, to live for others. In other words, I don't need that fear of an omnipotent, vengeful cloud wizard to dictate how I treat others. I treat others based on a deeper, more human set of principles, like I've laid out. God or the fear of hell doesn't influence me as much as the energy I put out into the world and the consequences of my actions on myself and others. My faith in a God is more of an answer to a universal question I've always been asking. My faith in a civilized society of progress influences how I act and react to the world and those in it. There's a lot more to it, but I've laid this out to give you an idea of how similar we all are in our beliefs and how the answers are found in the similarities. But to also peel back the page of perspective to show how a very narrow interpretation of a very narrow slice of a spiritual pie combined with the sins like greed, pride, wrath. Well, you can see how easily a group of people who honestly literally don't know no better could fall prey to that sort of cultism. Yes, they should have known better. They should be condemned, tried, and punished for their behavior and for the consequences their ignorance has had on our society. We should not allow it. We shouldn't glorify it. We need to get back to a place where we celebrate learning, because by celebrating all learning, we will encourage society to be a more studious people and hopefully more closely study the doctrines to which we swear and pledge allegiance, with study of those to which we don't as well. Maybe the extremists on every side will see that they've been fed a bastardized and corrupted message of fear-mongering and superiority by leaders who are power-hungry and greedy and using them as attack dogs. When the men and women we hold up as representative of we the people cannot pass a simple 7 deadly sins test, when we cannot pass the purity test of our basic tenets of being, thou shalt not lie. This valuation of truth above all else, holding truth as sacrosanct, it is a principle in every major spirituality. Why? Because I worked a job one time that was a sales and commission-based job. I asked to see how the pay was broken down, but it was such a complex formula, I'd have had better luck figuring out my quarterback rating. There was never any solid way to figure out how much money you made from one deal to the next. It all seemed so random, no consistency, and surprise, no one could or would explain it to me when pressed. If they won't explain the rules you're playing by, if they don't want you to find out what those rules are, there's something up. You're being let off a cliff. Truth is the way. We have to step back from our own emotions, spiritually. Pursue pragmatism. We have to accept that there are other paths, and that even someone walking our own path, denomination, etc., their specific beliefs could vary differently from yours. Religion and faith is very private and an intimate thing. It's kind of like masturbation. Now, you can Louis C.K. and witness to others whether they like it or not, or you can have a career and do it in the privacy of your own home where nobody can see you. It's the old adage of your religion is like your genitals. You keep yours to yourself and I'll keep mine to mine. It's shocking and offensive, but the intent is simple. These are private and intimate things that make others very uncomfortable when you pull it out. So don't bring it up. Keep it in your pants. Because we're betting our souls that we're right. And the odds are incredibly against us that we're right enough to cover the ante. Now, I like to draw from many faiths, but by traditional Christian standards, if the devil was trying to drum up business, he certainly would do that with strong opinions and closed minds. Speaking of strong opinions and closed minds, coming up next, I'm breaking down my journey through politics, from my early beginnings in the Republican Party and what drew me to it all the way to what led me out of the Republican Party. I'll explore key points in my life and in history, where I started to see that I was wrong. So wrong. From the MTV era to social media, from Reagan and Gorbachev to the Dixie Chicks and Barack Hussein Obama, I'm deconstructing a culture of cultism. Thanks for joining me. Check out some of my other videos on YouTube. I've got all of my original music, my TikToks, and other videos in separate playlists for your convenience. Follow me on TikTok and like, share, subscribe to this channel, and do all the things I need you to do. And if you like this series, consider a donation to Cash App. You can check out my merch. Follow me everywhere. It's all in the description. I'm Josh Brandon, and I'm overthinking everything.